Hello, and welcome to Seriously Pointless Conversations About Culture, the podcast where myself and a few of my friends get together and discuss nerdy things. Just a reminder, if you like what you're listening to, please subscribe to Seriously Pointless Conversations YouTube channel, or you can find us on your favorite podcasting apps. Thank you for your support. Without you, none of this would be possible. Thanks for coming by. Now let's get into the episode. Hi, and welcome to Seriously Pointless Conversations About Culture, your Seriously Pointless podcast about all your nerdy and geek things across time and the realm of dreamings, James. I am your host, David, and I am again joined by my wonderful and ethereal host, James. Co-host, James.
I like to think I have an ephemeral quality.
You have a bit of ephemeral quality, James. I'll tell you this, though, for sure. You were definitely in my dreams at night.
Oh, good.
I know, definitely. I've been in your wife's dreams because she said the other night, well, she told me the other day she had a dream about us together in her dream, us running away together.
Yes, that is her nightmare, is that I will leave her and run away with you, because apparently in Kelly's mind, that is the only potential partner for cheating that would make sense.
I guess I am flattered.
I don't know what that says about me and my wife.
It's a complicated relationship, James, like most ones.
Like most, yes.
Luckily, Jackie hasn't had any of those thoughts yet. I think she probably thinks I'm too lazy to even try to step out on her at this point.
Well, see, my wife knows I'm too oblivious anyway.
It's too,
like if someone hits on me at work, it usually makes me uncomfortable, and I come home and talk to my wife about it. And it's like, yeah, it's.
I have the same thing too. I'm oblivious about it too. I'm always like, oh, this person was really nice to me the other day, and she's like, she was hitting on you. I'm like, no, she wasn't.
It's like I used to think that whenever someone came up to you at work and it was a young, pretty lady or someone,
yeah,
and they stand a little too close to you and they put your hand on your arm and they lean in to talk to you, I thought they just didn't understand personal space and they were just trying to be friendly. But I realize now that was them showing interest.
No, it's totally another vibes that we are just oblivious as men.
I'm just saying that there is a clear explanation for my high school dating record now, and now I understand why.
I'm right there with you, man. We are definitely cut from the very similar cloth when it comes to that thing. So, but I know we've kind of stepped into it a little bit, talking about the ethereal and the endless qualities that are human beings, right? That make us up. So,
yeah.
Obviously, from you guys have heard today, we are going to be talking about the television adaptation, or specifically the Netflix adaptation of the Sandman. Now, we are specifically going to be talking about this because the comic books are a much, much more lengthy discussion than
yes, they are.
We're going to be having a little
10
trouble.
volumes of comics.
Yep, 10. Yeah.
And they came out in late 80s, early 90s,
Yep.
Mostly early 90s. I think it started in 89.
Something like that, yeah.
There was a very successful Audible adaptation this year.
Ooh, yeah.
Which was quality. If you enjoyed the original comics, you'll like the Audible one. It is a very faithful, scene for scene rendition.
It's got. I'm trying to think about who does the voice for Dream.
The voice they picked for Dream and Death were just spot on.
I know. So I know that is it Kate something? Anyways,
almost to the point where it hurt the actress who did Death for the TV adaptation, who did a good job.
She did a very good job.
But the voice they had for Dream and was for Death in the Audible adaptation was just so perfect.
I know. That's why I was a little sad that I know they didn't get the actors from the Audible to do that. I understand.
Voice actors and good TV actors are not necessarily the same people.
Well, he's the guy that played Professor X on the newer X-Men movies.
Okay.
And I can't remember his name, but he's a pretty good actor, actually. And the gal that did the Dream's voice, she has been in several Marvel movies too. Okay. So she's no slouch. She's a good actress. I'm sure it just had something to do with scheduling conflicts and things like that. But we're diving into the weeds a little bit. Yeah. But I definitely really enjoyed that those adaptations. Now, before we get into the I guess the nightmare or possibly the dream, which is the adaptation, because I've been waiting.
Two sides of the same coin.
Definitely, I've been waiting for this for a while. Let's talk about how we first encountered the Sandman comics, James. Do you?
I got these from you. I think
It's the first time this has
I
happened. I
was
think.
coming by to visit, or we were getting together at some point. I can't remember if it was the time I came down to Cape when I was studying somewhere else or not. But I remember that I showed up and you just like handed me a stack of 10 comics and you're like, James, you need to read these.
I think that was a time of my life where I was really, really heavy into comic books. I still love comic books quite a bit. I'll get them occasionally.
This was right after you made me read The Watchmen, which was also really good, but
Yes.
I enjoyed Sandman much more than The Watchmen.
So to kind of clarify, so Sandman is written by Neil Gaiman, who is of comic book and literary fame. If you guys have not heard of Neil Gaiman, where have you been? Sitting under a rock somewhere?
He's also been directing a lot of stuff in the British Broadcasting Channel. So I think he did some Sherlock. He did a
couple of Doctor Who.
Latest couple seasons of Doctor Who, which did not like as much as the Sandman adaptation.
It is okay. I think he's starting to he's very much an artist at heart, and I think he's got a very good creative eye, 100%. So, he originally
he's a legend for sure.
100%. So he actually started, I believe, doing some work for DC, and this is where he kind of slipped in and started working on these Sandman comics, because this is one of these ideas that he had a long time ago, and made it on their Vertigo imprint, which isn't around anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah, it was a serialized one. It was short, like 10, 20 page comics that were being released. Didn't they originally they got bound in with Vertigo? You said, yeah.
It was done out monthly, but I had actually picked these up on a whim. Honestly, I didn't know anything about it. I remember I was going through Barnes and Nobles one day and I found them. That's actually where I got mine from. And I found it, and I was like, what is Sandman? I've never heard of this before. This is probably 2006, 7. I was kind of getting into college at that point, and I had, for life of me, had never heard of this. So I picked it up, and like you said, immediately was awestruck by the art style and the narrative in it. And that's just at that point I saw that there were 9 other volumes. I bought them almost immediately. I think I blew an entire paycheck trying to get them, or a couple paychecks, because they were about $10-12 a piece, I think, at the time. Probably a little bit more now, but still, that's well worth the investment I had in it. So much, I loved it so much. So I bought the big omnibus edition. Like, there's a giant hardcover.
Was it 1 or 2 volumes for the big omnibus?
I think there's actually 2 or 3.
It was a couple volumes. Yeah.
I actually bought the first one for our friend Cole, who he's enjoyed it, I know, from a while ago. But I don't even know if they still have it or not. But they've had it, and I'm really kind of envious that he has that. So I might end up getting that once mine start to fall apart, because I've reread them so many times. But yeah, I've thoroughly enjoyed everything about those comic books ever since I started reading them. Just the way he writes is just it's singularly him. Like, nobody else writes like Neil Gaiman.
Yeah,
and you feel it in his comic books, you feel it in his novels, you feel it in the way he directs movies and TV shows and things like that. So
he does a good job capturing the human element of a lot of stories, and it really shows in the Sandman, where a lot of the work is contrasting between the very human experiences of the human characters in the series and the very inhuman experiences of the inhuman characters.
Yeah.
Which we'll kind of chat more about. But the endless are kind of the premier thing, but the story itself is told kind of as a series of vignettes where Dream is the character kind of tying it all together, because it's the Sandman's the title of the book. But for a large section of the stories, he's not even necessarily the main character.
No. Yeah, that's what they kind of like about it, is that he's kind of almost like a secondary character, or even sometimes even tertiary. Sometimes he's not even there, right?
A couple of the stories, he's just the Deus Ex Machina at the end, who just pops in and finishes the story.
Yeah. And sometimes, like you said, he's just not, like you said, he just pops up at the end. And I love that he's able to do that, and he understands that it's not all about being centered. It's not like traditional comic books where the whole story revolves around like 1 or 2 characters, and you never get to explore the world outside of what they're seeing. Almost.
I mean, the human element grounds the fantastical story, but also it does a good job of showing the endless as endless. And so, like,
Yeah.
when you're reading the comics, it blips back and forth in time, centuries before, centuries afterwards, back and forth in time. And it just kind of does a good job of showcasing how inconsequential we all are
Oh yeah.
compared to these endless beings who are kind of the
So
focus of the story ultimately.
so for people that have not read the comic books or seen the TV show, the Endless are what you would call uh, manifestations of human. Uh, I wouldn't call them human emotions. They're human like parts of being human, essentially.
They're
Like so,
like,
like
yeah, they're like basic functions
yeah,
of the
humanity,
sentient universe.
basic functional or humanity function.
In the Gaiman verse, they are below the creator, but they are above the small g gods.
Yes.
And so Dream, as the name implies, is the lord of the dream world.
Yeah.
His function is to ensure that dreaming continues to exist. He
Yep.
inspires hope and terror and keeps humanity creatively churning through
Yep.
the ages.
And then you have a bunch of other ones.
Desire, despair,
destruction, death,
delirium, who
delirium, yeah.
used to be delight, but has been corrupted over time, has become delirium, which I thought was wonderful.
Yes.
And destiny. So kind of.
Yeah, then you also have death as well.
And death. So hitting on like the 6 like big beats of human experience.
Yeah.
You could slice it up differently, but I think it hits the high points at least.
Oh yeah, 100%. So, and it's really interesting, and they all. It's funny how they go through it, but they all consider themselves related, and they're all part of that endless family.
They're part of a family, and so
yeah.
they are part individuals. So on some extent, they are people, and to some extent, they are a function of the universe.
Yep.
To the point even where, like, if one of them were to die, another one would just pop up and keep on continuing. They are truly endless.
Without giving too much
Without
away.
giving too much away, they are truly endless, and they talk about that early on in the comics. So.
Oh yeah, 100%. So, and it's interesting though too that you bring that up. So that's one of the things I was wondering what they were going to do with the television adaptation, which that's actually something I'm going to talk about real quick. I didn't know what they were going to do with it because this has been in production hell for a little while. So
yeah,
because they announced it, so it was weird. I'll start at the beginning though with this. So they originally announced that they were going to do a film in 1991, which I don't know how they would have done that.
How in the world would you do a film?
A lot of special effects, a lot of money.
You could
probably
maybe fit the first story arc where, like, Dream is captured and frees himself into a film,
and maybe that's what they were.
Maybe that's all they're going to do. Just like do preludes and nocturnes in one film.
So if you have to think about this as well, though, too, this was also coming off the heels of the Tim Burton Batman franchise.
That's true.
And so they were looking at unique properties to maybe make films out of. And this is, they thought, hey, this is kind of dark and gritty from the Vertigo line. Maybe we'll go with this because this was also at the point that, Frank Miller was coming out with Sin City and all these things were in the Dark Knight. And Frank Miller's Dark Knight was also coming out too, so it's all much more gritty. So
yeah, something gritty and dark.
So they were kind of thinking, oh, maybe we can do something that's kind of dark and brooding as well. But now, unfortunately, that never
is definitely on the gritty, edgy side of things, especially considering it was written in the early '90s.
Oh yeah, 100%. So I just think it's held up immensely well. But
definitely.
From that point, they kind of decided. I guess Neil Gaiman. So he's definitely very good about maintaining creative rights and control over, creative save so over a lot of his stuff,
especially considering how tied to DC this was. I didn't realize he still owned the rights to his own stuff. I thought DC had ended up owning it by the end of it.
I think they came to a compromise. He got a better end of the shtick than Alan Moore did.
Yeah,
Alan Moore got royally, pardon my French, he got royally fucked, honestly. Yeah. So he has pretty much no say so in like the Watchmen characters, and that's why you've seen the TV show and all that other stuff. So it's definitely kind of comes on the back of like what you have in your contract and where you come from. And I think DC, unfortunately, they took advantage of Alan Moore, and I think Neil had been
said of Marvel back in the day too. Like,
yeah,
if you wanted to get published, you had to come to one of the big names, and they had all the power in those relationships.
And that's unfortunately kind of where it came down, but it's definitely changed, and that's why you have had offshoots like Image Comics, Dark Horse, and these guys kind of put creators first, which that's why I'm always been a big proponent of Dark Horse, and I'm an Image Comics too. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think I've bought a DC or Marvel comic in years, James. So it's except for the big fun ones.
To the point where, like, Dark Horse, whenever they found out they were going to lose the rights to some of these series, they just released them all for free a few days before.
Yep.
It was kind of like it's like, hey guys, get it while it's good.
They thumb their noses at some of these the too big, the big two essentially. So
it's like, do you bite your thumb at me, sir? It's like, no, sir, but I do bite my thumb, sir.
That's all right, but not at you. Then who did you bite your thumb at? So, anyways,
little Shakespeare,
little Romeo and Juliet for you kids. I'm sure you guys will read it sometime in high school. But I enjoyed this to the extent that I was eager enough that I kept pretty good tabs on a lot of what was going on, what was going to be happening within this series, because they actually announced that they were going to be doing a TV series back in 2013, and then oh yeah, been years. And then they also even announced one and announced it in 2016. I think actually it was Joseph Gordon.
I'm glad they didn't do it too soon because I feel like this is a series that really needed CG to do it justice. Well, I think the type of budget that goes into series now.
I think the problem they were having with it was they couldn't get anybody. They could get some actors, some decent actors to get signed on. Like they had Joseph Gordon-Levitt signed on, and he's the kid from Third Rock from the Sun, and the last Batman movie. He is probably good. People hypothesize he was supposed to play Robin, but anyways, he it kind of got stuck in that like nobody really wanted to hook on and produce it essentially.
Yeah.
Eventually, I guess they got a buyer out of Netflix because Netflix is just looking for money to blow, and
supposedly $15 million an episode for this. So
yep, and I was like, "You got to be kidding me!" It shows.
I mean, it shows in the quality of actors, the sets, and everything. The sheer amount of CG they've put.
Oh my god, yeah!
But wow, 15 million episodes.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. So I will be interested to see, like I said, if they're going to do a second season or not, considering the praise that it's gotten. But eventually, they were able to announce. They announced, I think it was back in 2020, that they were going to release. They had started into production, and that Neil Gaiman was kind of heading the project a lot more, and he wasn't going to be directing it, but he was going to be heavily involved, which I was, thank God. Whenever you hear that an artist is involved in something that they created,
I was relieved, especially since he's a well-known director anyway.
Oh yeah.
If he hadn't been involved, I probably wouldn't have watched it in the first place.
Yeah, 100%. I will agree with you on that. But then on top of that, though, they started to get some decent talent on there. They started calling out.
I will say the casting on this has been, for the most part, spot on.
So, do you want to? Let me ask you this before we get into what the cast and crew and all that stuff. Do you want to go over who was involved in it, cast wise, director wise, and then we can kind of start to get and figure out how we felt about the adaptation?
Whatever way you want to go.
Okay, so let's go this way a little bit. So they actually pulled a guy that I've never heard of to play Dream. It's Tom Sturridge. Mm-hmm. He is spot on. He's got the brood down. It's great.
He's got the brood down. He does that little smirk to himself when Dream is slightly amused.
Yeah.
That captures the comics. He's got that very angular, almost emaciated frame.
Oh my lord, yes.
With a little bit of pale makeup. I mean, he looks like the Dream Lord.
So I will.
I think that was amazingly well done.
Let me rattle off some of the other folks that you guys might know. We got Gwendolyn Christie. She ended up playing Lucifer. She actually played Brienne of Tarth on Game of Thrones. You got Gina Coleman. She played the genderbender John Constantine. She actually plays Joanna Constantine, which we'll talk about a little bit later.
Yeah.
You got Boyd Holbrook, who played the Corinthian.
Did
a great job. You got Mason Alexander, who plays Desire. Kirby Howell Baptiste, who plays Death. She did an amazing job. I love that. David Thewlis, he played Dr. Destiny, he did a really good. They didn't make him nearly gross enough like they did in the comic books.
They toned the gross factor of him way down.
Oh yeah.
But they gave him a nice little story arc. We'll talk about that more. I had mixed feelings about John Dee's kind of
John Dee, yes.
arc. Yeah.
You got Charles Dance. He played Roderick Burgess.
Did a great job.
he just is amazing in anything he
The
plays
little
in.
scene where like he reaches down to get Death Ruby and then he stops and tells his son to do it instead. It's like, oh,
100%.
you magnificent bastard!
You're a piece of shit, and you're an awful father.
That
I love
was
it.
great right there.
100%. You got Yazine Jamal who plays Leda Hall, Patton Oswalt, who is fabulously known as playing MODOK in that little animated series they did. It's pretty stop motion animated series they did. He plays Matthew the Raven. I love him.
He had a great voice for that.
Joel Richardson, who plays Ethel Cripps, who is actually John Dee's mom in the series, and of course you have Mark Hamill plays Marvin the Pumpkin.
Legendary voice actor.
That's why I was like,
he did a small role in his youth, but he's really known more for his voice acting.
Oh, 100%, yeah. And I that's why I think it's only a small role. Nobody really knows it anywhere. But I was just pleasantly surprised that they decided to throw him in there, of all things. This was actually directed, so they actually had quite a few different directors. They got Jamie Childs directing some, Andrea Baez, Louise Hopper, Hisco Holsing. I'm going to butcher all these names. Maurice Almas, Mike Barker, and Carlia Fargit. And of course, you get all kinds of people, writing teleplays and develop. But Neil did the vast majority of it. So he's had this kind of idea, I think, of what he wanted for this show to be for quite some time. And the fact that Netflix was like, okay, cool, we're not going to bring anybody else in. You know what your vision is. I think that was a very intelligent and smart move on their part. Yeah. I'm sure it cost them a little bit more if they would have outsourced this, but still. But
like I said, I think it's an easy decision on their part, though, because he's not like he's an unknown. He has handled big projects many times before.
Yeah.
He's a writer from way back himself. Like, he is fully capable of doing this. They're not taking a gamble on him. This is a surefire guy.
100%.
Whether the material carries in television form or not, his ability to finish a project was not in doubt.
No. He's definitely one that will do more than marathon.
He's been working the BBC, like, he frankly overworked by the BBC for a while now.
And
I would argue that some of his shows have suffered recently because they had him doing too many things at once. But
I mean, that's the thing is if you got a guy that can produce consistently, but the quality will go down. It's just like you gotta give him time off. And I think he's kind of pedaled back a little bit from the BBC stuff a little bit more.
Has, yeah.
So I'll be interested to see what he does after this.
Lack of Sherlock episodes recently.
Well, Benedict Cumberbatch doesn't want to
he's got too popular for Sherlock now.
I know, he's much too good. He's only Doctor Strange now.
He's only like one of the gods of the Marvel universe now.
Pretty much. Why would you play Sherlock Holmes and get Emmys as opposed to getting multi-million-dollar contracts from Disney? So I can't blame him there. So I guess we've kind of talked a little bit about what it's coming from and who was in it. Let me ask you this, James. So you said you were about before we started talking about this and the episode. You said told me you were about 6 episodes in, so you're not all the way done, right?
I didn't got all through them. I got through the first 5 episodes or 6 episodes.
Okay.
I got through the entire arc where Dream is captured and frees himself and finishes his confrontation with John Dee. Like, he's recovered all this stuff. So
okay.
Pretty much that whole Preludes and Nocturnes, like the first volume of the comics.
Yeah.
Pretty much what I got through.
And I've noticed they've pretty much only done the first 2 anything from the first 2 volumes.
I think that's correct.
Yeah. That's kind of what they're sticking with right now. And I think that's good on their part because that leaves room for them to explore new things in the newer seasons, which at this point, there are hints that it's going to be renewed. I would be amazed if they didn't renew it.
Its reception's been very good. So
100%, yeah.
Unless it just turned out to be too expensive, I don't see why they wouldn't
No,
renew it.
100%. So let's do this. So what did you, because I don't want to give away a lot of the storyline and whatnot, I want to talk about what we enjoyed in the TV show and what we didn't enjoy about it, because I'm going to highly recommend you guys go out there and watch this, or at the very minimum, go out and, if you want to even really treat yourself, go out buy the graphic novels of these and really treat yourself.
Yeah.
So what did you like most about what you've seen so far in the series?
Uh, the work they've done on the scenery
Mm-hmm.
is downright amazing. Whether it's like Roderick Burgess's mansion, or sorry, Burgess's mansion,
It's okay.
the Dream World, the Castle of Dreams, it's all been gorgeous. It's been beautifully laid out. It's been very thoughtfully presented. They've done a good job of showing and not telling some of these things because that's something which, and I'm going to say the opposite in a few minutes, but this is something which they often struggle with when you do comic adaptations. Is comics by its nature lends itself to wordy exposition because you've got all this room on the panel
What are you talking about, James?
and the characters are frozen in a moment, and so they use a lot of language to explain what's happening because there's a limited amount of image they can do. And so often when you translate this into TV, either you lose that detail or it gets a massive info dump. And they did a good job of showing a lot of that, which I was really happy with. The casting in general, with a couple exceptions, was just spot on. It was amazing.
I don't agree with you on a lot of those points. I know for a fact that um, the wordy exposition stuff can definitely occur quite a bit in comic books. But I think that can be in general for a lot of
It's just the difference. It's just the printed media. You see the same thing when you
printed
go.
media for like
You see the
manga
same
and
thing
things
when
like
you go
that.
from manga to anime.
Yeah.
Like either detail is lost, or there's massive wordy info dumps where the character stares at the screen and talks for 5 minutes straight.
Yes, and I think that could be anything, any media, honestly. At that point, I mean, you even see even in films sometimes. But I think and I recently was watching an interview with an actor, and he said some of the best scripts that he's enjoyed and he's enjoyed playing is the ones that don't have a ton of wordy exposition. It says is so and so gives X person a gentle touch on the hand or a subtle look from the corner of their
They're
eye.
showing and not telling, and
It leaves so much more up to your imagination, right?
Mhm.
And I think that's so much more fun to play around with, and it's so much more fun. Makes it much more interactive, right? Because you have to figure it out what they're trying to say or what they're trying to do, right?
And that's really the beauty of like film or TV as a recorded
Oh, yeah.
medium is you can show these things as they evolve over the course of the conversation. You don't have to pick one snapshot picture and explain what happened.
Yes,
And so it's good.
and it is very good.
And I think failing to do that kind of removes the entire point of doing a television adaptation.
Oh, very much.
And so that was the thing I was most pleasantly surprised about. It's just excellent cinematography is really the word for that.
How they moved that kind of thing over there too. Now
the soundtrack was good. It wasn't inspiring, but it was good.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty. It was decent. It wasn't, like you said, it wasn't inspiring. It wasn't generic by any stretch of the means, but it was still very good.
They definitely had the sound volume a little too high, especially the first couple episodes, like to the point where I had to turn the subtitles because I couldn't understand Dream talking when he was narrating.
He definitely.
That's not a unique thing to this. I think that shows in general have started blasting the soundtrack for no particular reason lately, but
Yeah, you kind of look at them and go, why are we doing this kind of thing? So yeah, I will agree with that a little bit, and I noticed that it's definitely upped quite a bit, especially if it's like these bigger budget ones. I like it whenever like you said, I would prefer to have. I know that they're trying to make it's artistic choice to where they're like, oh, they're kind of have like a more of a whisper, or they're very much more softer sounding kind of thing. And I get that, but at a certain point, it's just like if I can't hear them over the sound of the soundtrack, it's like kind of like, well, why? Yeah, I got to put subtitles on. It's kind of defeating the purpose at that point. So
yeah, and I know they want Dream to have this kind of ephemeral, soft-spoken quality, and I agree with that artistic choice. But yeah, they just need to tone it back a little bit just so he can be more.
He can still sound like this, but still be kind of talk high, a little higher, right?
Yeah,
definitely can have that. But yeah, that's definitely that's a little nitpick.
Anyway, that's
I
a
know.
nitpicky criticism. That's not important.
No, definitely not. But I will agree with you. So what I enjoyed the most about kind of bouncing off you a little bit, I enjoyed the story or the story selection that they did because they could have there are a couple stories. I love that they started with preludes and nocturnes. I know that's kind of like okay, yeah, I get it. That's kind of they're gonna have to start somewhere, right? But I love that when they start at the beginning, they don't tell you anything about who's in the cage. If you never read the series,
You wouldn't know.
you don't know, right?
Mhm.
You don't know at all until almost to the very end of the episode, which is the way the first couple issues of the comic book series are, right?
Yeah. But they definitely kind of pulled the Corinthian in early.
A little too early, in my opinion.
Yeah.
That is.
They set him up as like the main antagonist when he's kind of a bit player in the grand scheme of the comics.
He definitely hits. He's definitely further out. I think he's kind of more of a. I really kind of would have wished if they would have stuck him in later on. But I know they kind of like it might have been just something that Neil's playing around with his creation, trying to see how things work and whatnot. But I would have preferred to kind of follow the comic book a little bit more and be like, oh, hey, we're missing these things from the Dreaming. Yeah, X, Y, and Z. And these are the ones. And then they're like, they show who they are. They show the one
because in
particular.
The other one, I think Roderick Burgess realizes right away who he has. And the reader finds out later when his son Alex is reading a book. And he shows it to his dad, like, oh, I'm so proud I figured this out. And he's like,
yeah, like you, I knew that like 15 years ago. What, you an idiot? Kind of thing. It's just like, what the heck?
Shows their toxic relationship a little bit more.
Ooh, wow, 100%. So, and I really enjoyed the kind of setup on that. That was probably one of the biggest things for me, and I like that they started with that, and they're kind of what appears to me at least that they're just kind of going through the series in a very chronological way, like they're supposed to. Because I would have been very upset if they wouldn't have done that.
It sets up a lot of stuff later because, without spoiling for people who haven't read the original source material, a lot of the characters who pop up for little bit parts in this introductory arc become very important later on in the story.
Very much.
And like the events here set up what happens at the end of the series, which, for someone who's read the whole comic book series, the scene with the Fates is chilling.
Very much. Very much so. And the fact that they threw it in there, and I was like, "Ooh, this is gonna be fun." And Jackie's asking me all these questions because she's never read it.
They did a good job with the Morgan.
Very much so. So I guess I guess we'll ask this now. So, what issues did you see, or what did you have issues with in this adaptation?
Okay. Just to get something out of the way, let's set aside a superficial criticism I've seen a lot on the internet.
Yeah.
A bunch of people are wondering, like, why is there such a gender diverse and gender fluid, like, why is there so much representation of this type of stuff? That was all in the original comics.
Yeah. All there.
Way before it became so mainstream on the media and TV, so let's just set that aside as a criticism and not worry about it.
I really don't care, honestly.
I don't care either, but I've seen a lot of people online losing their mind about it, and I've been listening to people sitting and talking about it, and they're all like, oh, we saw this, this, and this, and I haven't read the source material, but why is this all here? This must be someone being woke and virtue signaling. I'm like, you guys are way behind the eight ball.
Yeah, really.
You obviously don't know who Neil Gaiman is as a writer.
Not at all. That's why I
just want to get that out of the way as not being the point of what we're talking about.
So one tiny point on that too, though. That's why I really enjoyed that they picked Matthew Alexander. I can't remember Mason Alexander. So he has that kind of very effeminate quality about him. He plays an excellent Desire, and that's why you don't really know.
And that's what Desire is supposed to be.
That's great. It's love that.
Supposed to be. Desire is supposed to embody everything a person might desire.
Yep.
The goods and the bads that might entail, and so
very
Desire
much.
By their nature is an androgynous character.
Yes, that's why
something else it could have been.
No, not at all.
It had to be.
So,
what things that I have issues with?
Yeah.
Honestly, the episode with Constantine was the one I had the most trouble with.
Yeah.
I struggled a little bit with him changing John Constantine to Joanna Constantine because it changed the fundamental nature of the character, I thought. In a way that, like, for example, Lucien, the butler character, got changed from, like, this white elf character to this black female elf character. It changed nothing about the character.
Yeah.
The actor did an amazing job. Bravo.
Yeah.
Great. With John Constantine, it was a different character entirely.
Oh, yeah.
Like, John Constantine, they didn't necessarily portray this as much in the Constantine movie with Neo from The Matrix in it, But
Yeah.
but he's supposed to be this hard-smoking, gruff, hard-living guy, and instead they made him like this female lesbian who's like talking about their feet, and like they tried to kind of carry some of the same notes, but it just comes across in a very different way.
Mm-hmm.
And then they throw in this scene where they're at this, I guess it's supposed to be an Anglican church, but then they refer to the Roman rite of exorcism, which is Catholic. And then, like, the supposed Anglican priestess is flirting with Constantine. Was like, well, so if you want to do the female priest thing, you should do it all the way and not have this flirty relationship. And
Yeah.
to me, it just like really soiled the entire notion that this was supposed to be like a serious like church scene.
Rang a little hollow, didn't it?
It rang really hollow, and it was just frankly really insulting.
Well, and unfortunately, like I said, that's
some of that is just me. But
yeah.
later on in the episode too, where they had the scene where they're finding Constantine's girlfriend, who has become addicted to the sand, they toned the horror of that scene way down. Like in the original comic, like
he walked in the house.
Transformed like human flesh of like their parents were like in the hallway, and Dream had to protect them from it.
Yep.
And then the girl wasn't just emaciated, which they did a really bad job with that makeup. As someone who sees, frankly, really emaciated people as part of my line of work, that wasn't a very good job of it. But anyway, I know they had to keep the scene sexy enough for the like dream scene to not be horrifying. But anyway, like in the comics, she's like grown into the bad. Like,
yes,
it does a good job of setting up this idea that when mortals play with immortal powers, bad things happen. Which is one of the major themes of the entire series, is that when humans intersect with the endless or with the other immortal powers, the humans always come out on the bad side of it.
Always.
And they really soften that note, and I think it sets up what happens later badly.
And I think so. I will, and you'll see that even later on once you get to the serial convention.
Yeah. Which is one of the best parts of the comics. That is
they had to soften, and I think they had to soften it a little bit. And unfortunately, I think I will agree with you on that a little bit. That is a little bit of Netflix intervention in trying to, and I think also it's Neil a little bit. He had to make a concession a little bit to try to make this as.
Comics by their nature can do things you can't do on
TV. 100%.
Same thing, like you can go further in a written book than you can in a comic.
Oh yeah. Well, it's also he's trying to make it as available to as many people as possible, right? Mm-hmm. So they did the same thing with like talking about one of the most graphic novel or graphic comic books ever, Frank Miller's Sin City, right?
Yeah.
There is straight up a part where you see Marv, or not Marv, it's one of the other characters, cut off that yellow bastard. Like that's his name. His name is that yellow bastard. You get to see him cut off his dick.
Yeah.
You see him grab his dick and you see him cut it off.
Yeah.
They don't. All you see in the movie is him like grab him down there, and then all of a sudden a knife comes up, and then blood. Yeah, yellow blood goes up everywhere. So I'm telling you, man, they have to. You can do so much more and be so much more violent or slightly more gross with things, and it conveys such a different feeling whenever you're able to kind of go to that extreme. But I think it does.
It turned it into a story about Constantine's emotions in life, and it was less about the power that the dreaming was having on them. Which I had a different tone.
I'll push. It did. I'll push back on that a little bit though for you. So I always thought in the series, even in the comic books, that it's more about Constantine having to wrestle with his guilt of having done basically somebody coming in contact with him and him basically letting them, not caring enough about them to go check on them and letting them deteriorate, knowing that what he maybe had brought into their house or brought them into contact with was going to cause problems.
They did include that, and that was good.
That's what I enjoyed about that part. I'll push back a little bit on that, but I do feel like a lot of the stuff they did on that episode kind of rang a little hollow. I really wanted to see, like you said, just the filth and the grime growing up around in the apartment, things like that, and they didn't do any of that. But like I said, you always have to make concessions on things, and I'm kind of hoping maybe with the reception,
the room of the apartment was perfect too. Like
it has
an emaciated lady on an otherwise perfect bed. Like they didn't have the big piles of trash and stuff. It was just.
They did they're like, look, dust.
They weakened it a lot, I thought.
Yeah, I think they could have done a lot better.
The main themes were there. It just wasn't quite the same.
So what? So you've gotten past the Roderick Burgess and the Mr. D. So talking about toning down that kind of the grossness factor a little bit too. They definitely did that with John D. quite a bit.
They gave him kind of the Joker treatment where they made his madness more approachable, more human, more kind of insidious, and they spent a lot of time on exposition for John D.
Yeah.
And I think on one hand, I think it carried his story better. The original comic book series, this was a character who was previously apprehended by the Justice League in the original comics. And so he had this pre-established art style, which was very gross and very disfigured.
Yep.
And this pre-established madness pattern. And so I think they did a better job of making him more approachable and more human. And better job showing how the madness has affected him. But his story was just frankly intrusive in the first 4 or 5 episodes. Where they keep flashing back to him and his mom over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Can you just finish one thing at a time?
So I think that's also kind of the...
it's supposed to be the mid-season climax, so they're obviously trying to set it up, and that's important too. That's
one of the limitations of television adaptations, and is that even though you can have it over a cross of 10 or 13 episodes, you also have a limited amount of time that you can show something in. And so they're trying to set stuff up, and they're like, do I jam this all in one episode? Or do I kind of here it's coming?
Well, and if they didn't set it up, then it wouldn't have been satisfying when it finally happened. And that is a much, much worse sin, in my opinion, from a television standpoint, is you can't have an emotional climax if you haven't set it up. Otherwise, it just feels really bad for everybody involved. And so I'd much rather have them set it up and take some screen time for that.
Oh, 100%, yeah. So.
And part of this is me just already knowing what's going to happen. That always makes things... It always makes it come on, get to the good parts part of things.
I will agree with that. So I'll tell you this. I think my dad watched the first episode, and my dad, mm-hmm. He said he will not probably watch it because it's just not him.
That's fair enough.
And I was just
it's not him.
It's definitely not for him, but he's enjoying the hell out of the Lord of the Rings series, which I have other viewpoints on that. So
I have not watched that one yet. I've heard enough bad things about it. I'm probably just going to let it go. But
it's free right now on Amazon. I'm going to watch it, and I'll see how it turns out.
Let me know what you think. If you like it, I'll watch it. But
it's okay for right now. So anyways, it definitely kind of there were definitely some ringing hollow moments, but like I said, I think overall they definitely have gotten the tone down, especially with the Gaiman on board. And I feel like if they don't make the next series, and you'll tell me how you feel afterwards. Mm-hmm. Once you've actually finished the whole storyline, because they basically do the Vortex storyline, and then they do the serial convention storyline. Tell me how you feel about it, and I'll get back with you, and we'll kind of see what your thoughts are about the completion of it. Let me ask you this.
So far, I'm very happy with it. It's good.
Okay.
I'm nitpicking. There are definitely, like I said, there's some things I had issues with. But aside from the Constantine episode in general just feeling bad for me, everything else I loved. The only other major failing I saw was that, or not failing is probably the wrong word, it's a different approach. In the original comics, you get a lot of Dream's kind of inner monologue where he's talking, and especially during the initial sequence where he's locked in the cage, it kind of starts to convey and carry his character for you. In this one, they chose to show it from the perspective of Roderick Burgess, where Dream is just sitting silent. The comics show it more from Dream's perspective, where he is in the cage. And so, you don't really establish Dream's character very well until much further in, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just a different thing, and I'm not sure if it's
that might be Gaiman trying to play around with his characters a little bit differently.
Yeah, he's definitely mixing it up a little bit.
And that might be him just trying to see if he can convey the similar feeling, through a different perspective.
Because for me, you don't really figure out who Dream is until this into the first episode, into the second one, where you finally see him interacting with Lucien.
Oh, yeah.
Then you start to get a feel for who Dream is as a person.
Oh, he's kind of a douchebag.
And that interaction was inspired because it really shows, oh, you could have asked your siblings or help. He's like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm
he's very much, so it's funny that you say that.
They should have helped me. They knew I was suffering.
He's definitely that goth kid from the late 80s, early 90s kind of vibe to it. He's just always kind of got that about him.
He's got that vibe where he's like, on one hand, it's obviously he has all these tremendous tender feelings in his chest.
Yeah.
But they're fundamentally selfish. They're about him and about how he feels. He doesn't really care about everyone else. He just cares about how they make him feel.
You're okay.
And so you get this scene where, and this is one of the things I thought they did good in the Constantine episode, where the girlfriend, he takes the sand back and the girlfriend's laying there on the bed. He's like, okay, time to leave. And they're like, what are you going to do about this? They're suffering. And he's like, what do you mean? This isn't my fault. I didn't do this. This is your fault. This was the consequence of your actions. I'm going to go home now.
And then she's like, what? And then he's like, okay. And then it's funny. It's like you notice because this is what they're talking about in the comic books. Like whenever you first meet him, or he first gets free, he's kind of bitter and pissed off.
He's pissed off at humanity. Yeah.
And then he kind of starts to change a little bit.
Yeah.
Even so slightly. He gives her a quiet death, right? A peaceful death. And that's kind of the whole point of the series is even these things that are considered endless and ever there, they will slightly change over time, right? Always kind of because they're just like us, right? Because humans are ever changing, right? We're ever evolving. So wouldn't it be logical that things that are manifestations of our very being would slightly change over time, right? Or evolve a little bit?
And they do. On one hand, he does slightly change over the course of the series. On the other hand, he really doesn't.
It's
the way he acts, in small ways, he changes.
Mm-hmm.
But really, from beginning to end, he's fundamentally the same person.
Maybe it's something that
he's in the same rut that he's been in for ostensibly a millennia over the course of the series.
Mm-hmm.
He definitely softens up a little bit. He's not. I think you're right. At the beginning, he's just angry and out for revenge, and he kind of softens down a little bit. But
I guess it's kind of like people, right? He basically definitely manifests kind of what it is to be human, right? A little bit. He kind of goes through waxing and wanings of personality and things like that. And there's definitely moments in where they're like, oh, this guy's kind of a tool. I don't really like him.
Well, he kind of is. He's the type of personality who, from themselves, they only expect whatever the rules say they should be doing. They want to do, and I realize this is talking about me now, which is not necessarily my feeling, but they expect from themselves that people should do what they are obligated to do.
Yep.
And then from everybody else, he expects an outpouring of compassion because he, of course, is a suffering individual in the situation.
Wow. It was a little too close to home, James.
It hit a little too close to home for a second, but I'd like to think I've grown up a little bit since high school. But
I think we all have, hopefully. If not, there's definitely a couple therapy or doctors we can recommend to you, some therapists at least. So,
yeah.
But yeah, I totally agree with you on a lot of those points. So that's what I loved. I loved that they've kind of, for better or worse, that's definitely how we feel about it. But let me ask you this before we start to kind of close up a little bit.
What were some highlights for you?
Definitely the biggest highlights. Okay, so biggest highlights for me. So my wife thought I was weird. I loved the way they portrayed death in this.
Yeah.
She actually, whenever you first meet Death, whenever she starts to go for that walk with Dream, they go. She meets everybody. She does an old person, a middle-aged person, a guy that just got married. They even do a baby at one point.
That was in the comics, and that was one of the cool moments in the comics where the baby's was that it?
You say cool, but that
sad.
It's incredibly sad. She actually made me stop the episode. She said, I don't want to watch this anymore.
How do I put this? It's an everyday tragedy.
Yes.
Which is a way of saying, which is something which is incredibly heartbreaking and horrifically traumatic for everyone involved. But everyone else's life just kind of goes on.
And that's kind of what and
that's kind of part of my line of work is I experience that.
100% understand.
I experience that every single day. And so
you're kind of it's part of life. And I know how you feel.
It's interesting to see how an artist portrays it.
Yes. I think he does it.
I've been on the professional and the personal receiving end of these types of situations where it's life kind of goes on for everyone else involved, except for the people who are right in the middle of it.
100%. And I will 100% agree with that, man, because my background, I've been around, much like you've been around dead people probably at least, 2-3 times a week for the last 10 years of my life. So, and you kind of get a little numb to it, right? And you kind of feel it's like just an everyday thing. But like you said, once you get if you're in the middle of it and you're part of that, you're part of that part of the storm essentially.
Mm-hmm.
It hits a lot more home, and I feel like it's good for somebody other than us, especially since it's an artist like Gaiman, to treat it with so much more compassion
Yeah.
and reverence,
Mm-hmm.
I would say, than I could ever imagine to do. And the fact that he kind of shows that, hey, it's an everyday thing, happens all the time, but at the same time, it's also a very uniquely individual thing for each person that death touches, right? And every time it's sad, but also at the same time, it's kind of a wondrous thing, right? Because the cool thing I wanted Jackie to know was like the part where she's talking to the Jewish man.
Mm-hmm.
He's sitting there playing his violin, and he obviously has said, he's like, I don't practice anymore after he's died. He's
I
like,
gotta say the Shema. Give me time to say
the Shema. And I'm like, that is everybody. And the thing is, he goes, where am I going? She goes, we'll know when we'll get there. You'll know when we'll get there. She obviously, and I love how he does that.
I like how Neil Gaiman left death a blank slate or a black wall, or if you, I don't know what the right way to put it.
I would call her a blank slate.
Well, like Death, the character is like in every person.
She's kind of essentially like a Charon. She's just a transporter from one place to another. She doesn't.
But he left the experience of death as absolute nothing. Nothing said.
Yeah, it could be anything that you want it to be at that point, right?
Yeah.
And because that's one of the beauties of him, because he basically said this can relate to any person, any culture on planet Earth, maybe even outside of our planet. Even so, death is a universal experience, right?
And that's something they address too. Like all the endless are universal, and like in Neil Gaiman's, like in the Sandman comic, he makes it clear that this personification of dream is a fragment of the whole dream.
Even the little kitty cat.
Yeah, even the little kitty cat. Like the dream that we see and get to know in the 10 volumes of comics or however many seasons
it's not the pale white boy.
It is not, Dream the Endless. This is a small piece of Dream the Endless. Yeah. In the same way that what we see for death is a small piece of death.
Yes.
It's like death is everywhere.
It's everything. And I love, that's another really good point that you bring up. They actually do a really good job about this in the comics or in the adaptation too. Like, so the episode where I'm going to call this out, the episode where they go and he has to go and recollect, all of his regalia, essentially. Mm-hmm. He goes into hell and he walks past the cage and he sees that what was her name again? Naughty, or I can't remember. Basically, he was that was his wife. He married her, and
he tried to marry her.
I think he tried to marry her. I can't remember. But anyways, in the comics, he tried to marry her.
She sees him, he's Kaikul, which is the god of dreams from their fictional society.
Yeah, and he's obviously looks like he's African.
He's dressed up a tribal African. They have a different actor portraying him.
Yeah, 100%.
Great job.
Same voice, but I was like, that's phenomenal. You can do that for everything. If they can keep that kind of stuff up, where everyone kind of sees him slightly different, and it's just a different viewpoint that I love. I just love that kind of stuff because I hate to say it, I'm a white dude. I'm going to see things a certain way, and I like to see I like to learn how other people see things, and that's just me being curious for curiosity's sake. But I will interested to see what they're kind of do in later on in some of those other the other seasons if they decided to do anything like that. So let me ask you this: I know we're kind of going a little long-winded on this one a little bit, but what do you hope to see if they decide to do more seasons? What is that one?
Delirium is one of my favorite characters.
Mm-hmm.
I really want to see, I can't remember which one comic it's in. It's like the third or fourth one where Delirium decides that she's going to help Dream do something or another. And she goes on this little jaunt through like the world.
Yeah.
Where she like goes and talks to her random crazy people and like she ends up eventually accomplishing what she tries to accomplish.
Yep.
That I thought was really cool. I would love to see.
That's a little bit more
Delirium's little jaunt through the world.
A little more lighthearted.
Yeah.
It is fun. So I
enjoyed Delirium a lot. And a little bit of a spoiler, the Mad Hattie character who says she's 320 years old, she's one of Delirium's followers.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. And is probably 320 years old, honestly.
Probably is, yeah.
It's funny. So
I know they did do one of my favorite storylines with Hobb already.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten to that episode yet, but I heard
It's
that
good.
Hobb made in, and
it's good.
Hobb is great. He's one of the best characters, and he's one of the ones that kind of sticks around for the whole series.
Yeah. So why do you want to live? Why don't you want to die?
Because life is so great right now.
Yeah, and everyone else is doing it. I don't want to do everything everyone else is doing. I just love that. Love him to death.
That's one of the things I loved about the Hobb character in general. Is just he's not beaten down. He loves life because it's life.
Well, and at first,
and this is one of the things,
and then he does that trough.
He does, and even like in the comics, like even when he's like on hard times, he doesn't want to die.
No.
He's like, I might be an alcoholic who lost everything, but I'm still alive. I've still got me.
Yeah,
and I think that's like a much needed kind of ray of positivity, like in an otherwise dark series.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Neil Gaiman's works, and the Sandman especially, is full of very broken, poorly adjusted human beings. Like the vast majority of people and characters on the screen are fucked up in some way.
Well, I mean, that's
and to Neil's credit, he doesn't portray them as good. He portrays them as messed up. You know, like they are broken humans, and that's okay.
Yeah,
and that's what he's trying to show.
Like it's okay to be messed up because we're all messed up in some way.
It's not like some shows where you find some really messed up individuals who are kind of whitewashed over and portrayed as good because who knows why they felt the need to do that. But he's not afraid to show bad as bad and good as good.
Yes, and he's also
one thing I really like about his work.
And he's very good at kind of finding that. I like that. I like kind of when he said bad is good as good, but he's also good at kind of mingling the two and kind of making you think, oh,
well, and that's the thing.
How do I take this person? How do I character?
One person can do bad things and good things.
Yeah. It's like we're human beings, James.
Yeah, it's like I don't think this was in the original. I don't think this made it into this adaptation, but in the comics, like in the 6th or 7th volume, one of the characters in this is major spoilers if you haven't read it. Without saying who she is, she like moves into this apartment, and this apartment is full of these really, really broken people with their horrible relationships and their horrible things they do to each other, but they all come together to help this new person.
Yep.
And so you kind of get the same thing where you have these broken people who make bad life choices and do objectively bad things, but they are helping and they're being human and reaching out, and that's one interesting element of the work.
You will see. So they kind of touch on that a little bit with the Vortex storyline. They kind of melded two.
So they pulled that into the Vortex.
That's
supposed to be a consequence of the Vortex later on.
You'll see. Well. It's okay. I think they did a pretty decent job at it.
Okay.
I think they could have done a little bit better, but that's besides the point. So I know that he's trying to like condense some things here and there.
And that's going to be part of a TV adaptation, is some of the sprawling comic stuff was going to get condensed. I was just pleased that they covered most of the intro stuff.
Well, yeah.
They did make some weird choices in the first episode.
What are you talking about?
With the timeline, like Roderick Burgess, for example, they didn't show him coming back every 10 or 15 years to talk to Dream again. They just kind of showed him once, or they showed him once at the end, which I guess kind of encompassed that same idea. Yeah. But I think they wanted to focus more on Alex as a character.
I could see that.
He was probably one of the more changed characters.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of kept the same broken relationship with his dad, but in the original one, he kind of just became his dad.
Yes.
And he does the same work. He does the same thing to everybody else. He takes the...
And I think that was a misstep.
And he does the same thing with Dream. In this one, they try to portray him as being more of, I care and I'm reaching out, but then I'm injured by my father's things that he's doing. Like shooting the Raven was a change. Then they just kind of show him like 80 years old at the end of his life making the same demand. They didn't really show that in between where he was acting like his dad, and it was all implied, but it wasn't shown as smoothly. And I know that they didn't want to have the same scene 10 times in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
That just would not have been satisfying TV.
No, definitely not.
And so it just felt a little different.
Well, you know what, James?
The main points were all there. The main emotions were all there. It was good. It was a good adaptation.
You need to go talk to Neil Gaiman and be like, I will produce this for you.
I could not do better. I know I could not do better.
Curious, because I won't do it. I couldn't do it either. So in my idea, my thoughts, I would love to see, kind of going off that, I would love to see the I want to see the Shakespeare episode.
Yes, the Midsummer Night's Dream one. That one was one of the
I
best.
will really want to see that one. The other one I want to see is this is kind of a weird pull, but I like it's the cuckoo storyline. So that has to do with
I remember that one. That one's a good one.
that one is with it's actually on one of the people that are in talking about those broken people inside that apartment
Mm-hmm. It's one of the stories that seems random at first, but it kind of all ties together into
yes
that. It all comes back to those people in that apartment and
yes and
why they're all there.
and I want to see that a little bit more, and I kind of hope that maybe they'll put that in, but the way the last couple episodes went,
I think they have
I
to
don't
though, right? Because
not necessarily.
I guess they could
It's kind of
it.
it's
I
kind of a
guess they
side
could cut
story.
it. They could cut it.
I kind of have a feeling they're going to cut it just because of what I've seen, but I would really like to see that because they showed us a little bit of that, but they didn't give us everything.
Well, so how about this? What's something you would like them to cut that you don't want to see make it to the TV adaptation? I can start if you need.
Yeah, go and start. Let me give you a minute.
The whole scene in the Dreams and Mists one where they have the British boarding school and like the former students are coming back to life.
Oh, okay. You might have stolen mine.
It's just so unnecessary and it's so clunky. And frankly, that's the reason why I've stalled on listening to the second volume of the audiobook.
Yeah, it's a little.
It just doesn't belong. It doesn't contribute to the story in a meaningful way.
I will agree
and
with you on that a little bit.
It's such a change of tone from what else is going on. I just would be very happy if that just doesn't make it in.
Okay, I'll actually, I'll concur with you on that one because I can't think of anything off the top of my head that. And when you started talking about that, I remember vividly not really enjoying that storyline because I get it. There is a point to it, but at the same time, at the end of the day, is it kind of a rehash of some other stuff that he's done? Like it's very reminiscent. I can kind of see. So when he does that one, it kind of feels more like a precursor to the Graveyard book, which he actually wrote more recently. Mm-hmm. That feels like a better version of what he did there, a little bit more, and it feels like he altered it a little bit more and made it a little bit more seamless, and it runs a little bit better. So, which is another great book you should listen to. Definitely a little boy lives in a graveyard and is taken care of by a vampire.
Interesting.
And he can talk to the ghosts of the people that live in the graveyard. It's pretty cool. I loved it.
That could be fun.
It's a fun little read. But yeah, that's. I can't think of anything else I wanted to say about it. But is there anything before I know we wrap up at the end of the day, because I know we're kind of getting long winded on this? Is there anything you want to kind of summarize how you felt about this?
I mean, all in all, it's a good adaptation. I'm enjoying watching it.
Okay.
Like I said, for the most part, the casting choices were amazing. The actors all did a phenomenal job.
How many grains of sand out of 10 would you give this? Or an arbitrary number. I don't even care.
I'll give it 9 out of 10. I mean, I'm enjoying this series a lot. There are some choices that I just think are weird and don't make a ton of sense.
Okay.
I guess we'll have to see where they go. Maybe it will make sense and we get to the end of it all.
You're more generous than I am.
Generous, I guess. Maybe an 8 or 7.
Ooh, you're changing up.
It's really well done. But there's been at least one thing in every episode that I was like, why did he do that?
Just changing, man. He's a lot more different than when he was 20 years old writing the story. So
I guess that's true.
He's in his 50s now, so he's definitely.
It's been 30 years since the comic was written.
So he's probably had some viewpoints change and some ideas change and whatnot. So I would probably give this either a 7.5 or an 8. Probably, I'll make it a 7.75. How about that? It was good enough that I will probably rewatch it and definitely come back a couple more times to watch it on my own. But I still need to finish that last episode with Jackie because it's one they dropped, the 11th episode. It's a special episode that's all animated, but it's still got the same cast and everything in it. So
really,
it's pretty fun apparently. So it's a couple of those little side stories. It's got the cat story and it's got the Calliope storyline.
And this is something that Kelly was really upset about.
Uh-oh.
They didn't do the Dream Eyes very much, where he has like this pinpoint starlight eyes.
Yes.
They did it a little bit in the first episode, but she's really missing the Dream Eyes.
She just wants something to look longing into. You just gotta get some contacts, James, that have a little like that little
It's
thing.
okay. I'm not feeling insecure. She's not into frail, pasty boys.
Oh man, that's great. I love that. Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I had a really dumb joke there, but it's gonna slip away from me because it's not gonna be. But anyways, guys, I think it's gonna about wrap us up tonight. I know we talked extensively about the Sandman adaptation. If there's anything you want us to talk about in the future about this, let us know. We're probably gonna hit the comic book at some point in our lifetime.
Yeah. If you'd like to hear us talk about the comic book in detail, it's a great thing to talk about.
100%.
It's got some cool themes.
That we might have to do that, and maybe at some point. I know I've been thinking about this for a little while. We might have to maybe do like a little watch along where we sit here and we watch something and we kind of talk about it. Maybe an episode or something like some commentary on an anime or something like that, or whatever we feel like watching that day. But that might be something in the future at some point. But yeah, if you guys liked what we talked about today, let us know. If we had problems with how we feel about the Sandman adaptation, let us know too, because I'm sure there's lots of contentious points that we threw in there and things out there. So, but yeah, James, I want to say thank you for coming into my dreams this evening and not bringing me any kind of Corinthian type things. So I will.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for tolerating my interrupting more than usual.
It's okay. Hey, man, that's what it's all about. Good friends sometimes interrupt each other on these things when you really want to get your point across. But again, James, thanks for coming in here. I will be coming back probably next month with the news and whatnot with James. Hopefully, we'll see you guys next time. All right, guys, have a wonderful night. If you're interested in keeping up to date with new episodes on our channel, add us on any of your favorite podcasting apps, or subscribe to our YouTube channel at Seriously Pointless Conversations. If you have questions or concerns, please email us at seriouslypointlessconvo@gmail.com. We appreciate any feedback. Thank you for listening to our show.